At 17, he accomplished the unimaginable by winning not one, but all three of the biggest science fairs: the 2013 Google Science Fair, the 2013 Siemens competition, and the 2014 Intel Science Talent Search competition for his research on new drugs to fight dangerous strains of the influenza virus. He currently attends Harvard University. Delegates, please give a huge hero's welcome to Eric Chen.
Have fun. Good to see you.
Good morning, everybody. Did we all have nice, restful nights last night? I was actually delayed on my flight here last night, but on my flight here, I was actually sitting next to this mother and her daughter who was still in elementary school. And so I'd gotten on the flight, put my carry-on into the overhead compartment, and then sat down next to the lady, and then her daughter was in the window seat. And I was like pretty ready to just put on my headphones and conk out for the flight, but I was struck by this just little girl's ability to just never stop talking. My first thought was, wow, that'd be a really useful skill for my talk tomorrow morning. But my second thought was, wait, much of what this girl is saying is in the form of questions. And next I realized that, well, I actually don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. I never really thought about how those inflatable life vests inflate when you pull on the tabs, or how exactly the water-activated light on them actually functions. By the end of the flight, I'd realized that this child's perception of the flight was completely different from mine. No longer were we simply on a flight to Boston. Now we were shooting through the skies in a pressurized metal tube. It also reminded me that as we grow older, something shifts in our perception of the world. We all start out as those inquisitive children, constantly bombarding our parents with questions. But as we get older, some of this curiosity gets trained out of us. We're told to stop asking so many questions. We become familiar with the world around us, and even if we do see interesting things, many times we are too preoccupied or busy to find out more about it. In school, the focus is no longer on finding and discovering our own questions, but rather memorizing the answers to questions that people have already asked. I, along with many of you, was lucky. Our parents and teachers went the other way. They tried their best to answer our questions and encouraged us to ask more, deeper questions. I believe that this love for questions is the fundamental part of loving science and becoming successful scientists. For me, this desire for questions was the reason I became interested in research in the first place. I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world to be able to go out there and answer questions that no one else had ever answered before. But the world of science kind of has the stigma for being for the elite. We see becoming a scientist as something only achievable after countless years of schooling. It's a world of PhDs and MDs and MMGBSA and 2,4-dioxybutanoic acids and thousands of other titles and acronyms and unpronounceable jargon. It seems like you need a title or affiliation to participate, and without one, it's almost impossible to get to the resources that you need. However, in today's age of the internet, I believe that we shouldn't be daunted anymore. It's pretty easy to find the email of any professor or doctor out there, or you can connect with them via a platform like LinkedIn. In my case, I went through the websites of professors in my area, and when I found a few whose work interested me, I emailed them asking if I could work in their labs. Now, writing these emails took a lot of preparation and careful thought. These professors don't have a lot of spare time, money, or resources for high school students, or really anyone that they don't see can help them. I had this student that I was mentoring. He was really smart. And I sat down with him, and he wanted to start research, so we went through a list of contacts that he could reach out to. Now, a few days later, I ran into him again, and he was absolutely distraught. He comes up to me, and he's just blubbering, and he's like, oh my God, I reach out to all these professors, and there's at least a dozen of them, and none of them have responded to me, and they must hate me, and I must not be worthy. And I just cut him off right there, and I told him, look, maybe you sent these emails to the wrong email addresses or something. Let's take a look. And as I scrolled through each of the emails, one thing I immediately noticed was that each of the emails was exactly identical, and it read something like this. Dear Dr. So-and-so, my name is Michael. Can I work in your lab? Thanks, Michael. And what I told Michael that day was, look, this isn't because you're not worthy or anything like that. It's because all the professors see of you is what you put into this email. And for all the professors know right now, you could just be a rock named Michael, because nowhere in that email do you establish that you're human. These professors want to see an individual with a story, with passion. If you can instead put into this email all the excitement you have regarding the work, these professors will only be too happy to welcome a young, eager scientist. Now, many other students have come to me and said, how are we, as high school students, supposed to do research at the PhD or graduate level? And my response to that is that a high school student with PhD-level thinking is absolutely possible in today's day and age. This is largely due to the fact that research material and information, which used to be confined to the university lab, is now just keystrokes away for any of us with an internet connection. This immediate accessibility to knowledge is leveling the scientific playing field by putting the information into the hands of anyone who is hungry for it. Now, this is fundamentally different from 20 years ago, when getting this research information was a huge hassle. You have to make a trip to a campus library where you show your ID and affiliation, and that finally let you walk into the rooms of shelves, of books, of articles, on the hunt to just find a single piece of paper that had the answers you were looking for. Now is a very exciting time. Every second, 7 new minds are logging onto the internet for the very first time. That makes several thousand since I began my talk, and 500,000 every single day. And the internet is a perfect place to foster a sense of inquisitiveness. It puts the resources and tools and people that we didn't have access to before right in the palm of our hand. And these are tools that can really help anyone change the world. So now that everyone has access to these resources, what is the fundamental difference between those who innovate and those who don't? To answer that, I'm going to tell you all a story about carrots. Now, how many of you have heard that carrots are good for your eyes? I'm sorry for those of you who all love carrots, and they do have great nutritional value, and I totally encourage you all to eat your veggies. But no, they actually don't really significantly help your eyesight. The origin of this claim actually came all the way back from World War II, when the British invented this nifty thing called radar, which left their planes see other things in the sky, notably enemy airplanes. And at the time, German aircraft, their fleet was completely dominant. But then suddenly, these British aircraft started shooting them down left and right. Now, the British ministry knew that there were German spies on British land, and they didn't want them to figure out about radar and level kind of the playing field. And so they spread this rumor that the secret to their success was actually due to a new diet they were feeding their pilots, which consisted largely of carrots, which let them see better during the nighttime. And so what do you think the Germans did? They ate loads and loads of carrots. Did it help? No. But they ate so many carrots that their skin actually started turning orange. And it was a joke of the time that you could tell a German pilot from any other pilot just based on the color of their skin. Now, what's the moral of this story? The moral of the story isn't that you or me or the Germans are eating bunches of carrots thinking that it'll help our eyesight. The important part of this story isn't even that the British found the radar at the time they did. I think the fundamentally important part of the story is that the Germans, upon hearing the explanation that carrots was the reason the British were doing well, stopped looking for other explanations. We have this fundamental human nature to believe stories when we're told them. And it's not inherently that dangerous to believe the stories. But what does become dangerous is if we refuse to look at any other possible explanation. This is a trend that we see time and again in history. From the insistence that the world is flat, to even today, the denial of evolution. I believe that in today's day and age, the successful scientists will be those that carefully look at their assumptions, that scrutinize every observation. After all, the truly innovative scientists are looking where no other scientist is looking. And that's also why I see so much power in our youth, our kids. We're a group that's usually dismissed as immature or inexperienced, but that's exactly what makes us so special. After all, we can't make bad assumptions when we don't even know what the assumptions are. The power of the young mind is its daring capacity, that we won't take "you can't do that" as an answer. We're a group that thinks in terms of possibilities, not boundaries or limitations. Being completely naive to the complexities of a problem is the exact reason why we're able to go out and solve those problems. When it comes to success, I think that Mark Twain said it best. To be successful in life, you need two things: ignorance and confidence. And that was me, ignorantly confident at the age of 15 when I first went to start doing research. I first worked in a biology lab, and then, because I was interested in the power of computers, in a computational lab. It was there that I had the idea of applying what I learned in the computational lab to solve a biological problem. And with news all over about the dangers of the H5N1 and the possible coming of another flu pandemic, I wanted to see if I could harness the power of computers to speed up the discovery of new flu medicine. As I started to look in the possibilities of my research, Google became my best friend. As I started actually coding and bugs came up everywhere, Google became my go-to to figure out why exactly my code was crashing. I was even able to take an online graduate level course on drug discovery. What I found is this. Currently, a lot of drug companies are using robots to test millions and millions of chemicals just to find a few that might become real flu drugs. What I proposed is first adding a preliminary step, using computers and along with models of flu proteins to sift through those millions and millions of chemicals and just find the top few hundred that are most likely to work. Then, we just test those several hundred so that we saved all the resources for testing the other millions that are left over. The computer was kind of making an educated guess, while the biological side was more validating if those guesses were correct or not. Using this approach, I was able to find a handful of new flu drugs that, to this day, are still being pushed towards becoming real flu medicine. Now, my story may sound unusual to you today, but if it is, it won't be for long. I am not an outlier. I am just a leading indicator of an enormous change that is already happening. We may be young, but that might actually turn out to be our greatest asset. We have reached an era in science where we are truly tapping into the minds of every single individual in the world to solve the daunting challenges facing society. All we need to do is keep asking and keep asking well. Thank you, everybody.